Hi everyone. As we become accustomed to the tightening of restrictions in this current pandemic, the next thing we all want to know is when will it end, and what then? You know. So I've invited along long-time astrologer Babula Clement to give us some insights to the situation from an astrological perspective on what's been happening, why now, when will it end, and what's next. So hi Babula, and thanks for doing this interview.
Hi Sheryl, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm thrilled to be talking about this with you and the people who join in and listen. It's a big time, and astrologically there's a lot we can say about it.
There is. Yeah. So in these very unsettling times, people are really wanting answers to these questions. Now, I've been interested in astrology for many years, although I'm not a professional astrologer or anything, not even an amateur astrologer, but I've been very interested in it. And I've even done some classes with you. So I know you're very knowledgeable and on this subject, and I thought, well, who better to ask about what the hell is going on than Babula?
Okay, thanks.
So now, just to introduce today, over the years, I've come to understand that astrology is more than just horoscopes in the newspaper. It's so much more. It's a serious study of the repetitive patterns of planetary motion and the systems that are created by those patterns, which have been used by seers throughout history. It's not new, is it?
No way. Thousands of years old. And all cultures, including our Aboriginal cultures, all cultures have looked skyward, to watch patterns over long periods of time, to tell the story of what's happening on life on Earth. And out of all of that has come a tremendous wealth of knowledge and systems of knowledge. And it's just phenomenal. It's very rich and very old, and it has many branches,
Yeah.
and you can look at anything in life and understand it from an astrological point of view.
Yeah. But so I guess for most people, the mystery, though, around astrology is how those patterns can be applied to circumstances, to individuals, to generations, to countries, governments, and even pandemics. So, which
Absolutely.
is what we're facing now. So maybe you'd like to begin there about what you've been seeing happen, preempting all of this. And I'd go back to even maybe the floods, the bushfires and the floods, and et cetera, because Australia's been getting a real hammering, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And I think where I want to start, because I think this is a really important piece that's sort of the background to what's going on astrologically. And I just want to start by talking a little bit about Pluto in Capricorn, because Pluto, the planet Pluto, an outer planet, is a planet of tremendous power energetically. And in mythology, we speak of him as the Lord of the Underworld, and he represents deep, powerful processes of death and rebirth, dismantling, breaking down, regeneration, endings and new beginnings. And it's like what one astrologer described it as an energy of awesome immensity and intensity, and that's a great description. It's really powerful stuff. It's the ruler of Scorpio, and anyone who's a bit scorpionic will know what I mean, because that's this energy. And in 2008, this planet, which as an outer planet moves very slowly, and it's in one sign for many years, for a generation. We all belong to a different Pluto generation according to what sign it is when we were born, and it really tells us a lot about the generational characteristics and so on. So Pluto moved into the sign of Capricorn in 2008, and the big event that marks that was the world economic crisis, the crash. Yeah. And astrologers were watching this coming and were thinking, this is going to be strong. And the reason that is because Pluto's always somewhere, but why was it significant in Capricorn? Because Capricorn is an earth sign that is to do with, among other things, governments,
Yeah, it's a bit like the use-by date on your milk carton. Over.
Yes, exactly. This is it. This is it, guys. That's it. Yeah. This is it.
Yeah.
And so this was starting, you know, we saw the first signs late, like even back with the GFC, the global financial crash, there were signs the year before, the cracks were showing. So that, you know, so there's signs as these planets are sort of starting to move into place. So it's been massive. And so this year we have 3 comings together of Jupiter and Pluto in Capricorn, and so that the story continues. But that big piece in January, and so yes, Australia was kind of on fire. I mean, it was dramatic, and Australia has strong Capricorn energy. And if you look at the birth chart of a country, as we do, as astrologers do, and that's a field called mundane astrology, you know, looking at politics and what's going on geopolitically and so on. It's all there, you know. Australia was getting hammered. Because remember, we fared so well in the GFC, but yeah, no, this is different. This is everybody.
Yeah, it's worldwide, isn't it? Yeah.
Worldwide.
So, and that, I guess that, because Pluto is generational, isn't it? So
yes.
So it's why it's happening to people alive at this time.
That's right. And I think of, you know, all those young ones who've been born since 2008. During all this whole period, you know, all have Pluto in Capricorn. And so they're part of this very important generation that will, at best, be, particularly some of those who are, you know, the older, wiser souls coming through, and there's a lot of them. We all know some amazing children.
Yeah.
Will be agents and carriers of this powerful transformation of the world and how it organizes itself.
Yeah.
Which is Capricorn. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess you've just touched on a point there for me, is that when I've read about astrology, what I've come to understand, it helps give you a much bigger perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah,
of everything, eons, you know, ages, you know, those sorts of things. It's just like we're alive at the moment. It's just a point in time, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's an interesting thing, because I know you love all of this too. That I was, I actually had scheduled in April, and I doubt that it'll go ahead. You know, a workshop in person, a whole weekend on this really big picture going. You know, where are we in this frame of, you know, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands, if not billions of years. You know, there's actually all cultures. You know, we look at India and their yugas, you know, they're saying this is the beginning of the end of the Kali Yuga, and the Mayan calendar, and like all of these old cultures all have, and the Aboriginals too, these stories and these timelines, and this is a critical turning point.
Yeah, and I guess I'd just like to reassure people, it's not the end of life.
No.
Like a global wipeout. It's the end of how we've been living.
Yeah.
Isn't it? How society's been structured, and like you were saying before, you know, governments, businesses, all that. They're all being hit, and of course we're part of that. And
that's right.
Us too. But there will be more things to come. But I was reading that that we have a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction every 13 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, but we don't always have a virus or a pandemic every 13 years. So how does that sort of manifest as a pandemic then?
That's a really good question. And there's a few things I would say about that. One is that the reason this Jupiter-Pluto conjunction is particularly strong is because Saturn is with it.
Okay.
And Saturn is a really powerful, like Saturn is in a sign for 2.5 years. So, you know, he's moving considerably more quickly than Pluto, but slower than Jupiter. And Saturn traditionally was often referred to as the Lord of Time and the Lord of Karma. And as the ruler of Capricorn, he's the guy in our life and in our horoscope and chart that says, okay, the time has come right now, this is what you're dealing with, and you're not going to get let off the hook. So every time we have Saturn transits, which we frequently do in our life, they're the moments, you know, when life is saying you have to deal with this and there's no way around it. You can't ignore this. I'm here, deal with it. You know, he's like a strong sort of parent God, you know, who lays down the line and says, you can't go past this point until you've sorted this out. Yeah. And so now that he's here, I think that the reason it's a pandemic, because it's the one thing that touches everybody, that potentially touches everybody. There is nobody on the planet, unless you're perhaps one of the extreme elite who are able to fully shut yourself off. But even then, I don't know, you know, like everybody, I think it's the one thing that can impact everyone.
Unless you live on
Yes, unless you live on an island and you're a total recluse. So, you know, there may be some who've done that.
I'm thinking about Sorry,
the other thing is that Neptune's in Pisces and has been now for some years. Neptune's another slow-moving planet that's in a sign for 14 years. And so Neptune moved into Pisces in 2011 and moves out around 2025, around the same time Pluto changes sign. And Neptune, as the ruler of Pisces, this sign and this planet, one of the things they do represent is a collective sort of undoing and a releasing and a letting go. And medically, they rule the immune system and things like viruses, bacteria, things that can spread, and things against which our resistance is lowered because it governs the immune system. And Neptune is now right in the middle of the sign of Pisces, of its own sign, so it's quite powerful. And I think for many years now there's been a building of collective grief around so much that's being lost, you know, in the natural world and so on. And that's a part of this. So I think that's a background theme that's going on as well in the collective. And it raises people's kind of anxiety levels, you know, and causes us to feel. We have to feel with Neptune.
Yeah.
You know, we have to really look at what we're feeling. We can use our intellects and our knowledge, absolutely, but with Neptune, we also have to actually honour what we're feeling.
So I've always understood Neptune and Pisces as being a bit dreamy, but it can also be delusional too. Do you think that's why people have been so slow to do what they should do? You know, apart from being rebellious, which we'll get into in a minute, but just so deluded, it won't affect me. You know, this won't affect me. I'm young, I'm healthy.
I know, and it'll be all right. Don't worry about it. You know, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's like with Neptune and Pisces. What one part of it is that it's often hard to face the harsh realities of life in that sign, with that planet. If we are Piscean or Neptunian, we're very sensitive, we're very open. Life can feel harsh and difficult, so we want to kind of escape into a beautiful fantasy world, you know, and just not deal with what's right in front of us when it gets too hard. That's why this sign governs things like addictions, drugs, and alcohol. Like, it's too hard, give me a joint, have a drink, you know, put a needle in my, you know, I'm being extreme, but that's actually true with this.
Yeah.
But really, Neptune and Pisces are actually about connecting with spirit and soul and the divine, and recognizing that we are part of the one, you know. There is no separation. And I think that's, you know, you just bringing that up is good, because it helps me to see that what we're seeing is that we all say that, oh, we're all in this together, but now it's really real, isn't it? We are all in this together, and that's very Neptune in Pisces, this sense of oneness in the collective.
Yeah, that sense of surreal.
It's surreal, and in one way we have to sort of actually just surrender to what's happening, because, well, what else can we do? It's a surrender.
Well, I think too that, I mean, I had an illness for 10 years, and I eventually surrendered to where it was taking me. But when you surrender, that process of surrender, lots of interesting things can be activated.
Yes.
And that's the other part of this. Like right now, we're seeing all the doom and the gloom, and and people naturally project into the future and, oh my God, this is the worst thing that's ever happened, which it is a bad thing, you know.
Yes, it is a bad thing.
I don't blame them for running around and going nuts, you know.
That's right. It's panic and anxiety. Yeah.
Absolutely. But there's other things, and this is where those other dimensions come into play when in those processes. And the more that we go along with what's how things are progressing, and I like to say riding the waves, the easier it will be on everybody,
yes.
on individuals and the collective, because you know, look at these people. They had to shut Bondi Beach in Sydney because those people did not want to ride the wave of what would have been helpful. Now what have they got? Huge cases down there in Sydney now. So,
that's right.
Yeah. So
that's right.
Yeah, and this is sort of like citizen responsibility now, isn't it?
That's right, and it's a collective thing, isn't it? You know, all around the world now. That's right. It's, you know, literally one of the biggest wake-up calls humanity's ever had. And, you know, as terrible and as confronting as it is, myself and many others deep down are feeling a sense of almost like, yeah, this actually really needs to happen. This needs to happen. It's been coming for something big like this, because we humans are very good at, as you said, deluding ourselves, thinking, oh, it'll be all right, don't worry about it. We put things off. We don't do the things that we know we need to do for our own well-being. You know, we like to just, don't worry, you know, it'll be all right. It's like so many things are just coming home now. And I think in our own way, whatever we've been putting off, even in terms of our own well-being, spiritual, physical, like, let's get real now, this is it. It's time to sort of put aside all the things that don't matter, you know, and really get on with what does matter.
Yeah. So that's what we've talked about so far, is like where this came from, and what's happening right now. But there's some dates that are coming up, April the 1st and April the 4th, that are significant, I think. And I believe that, first of all, I wanted to talk about saying that even though you've been talking about all these planets coming together, fortunately, they don't just stay like that. They move on, don't they? They change. Yeah. So thank you, Lord.
I know. I know.
Yeah. So now, you were saying in one of your newsletters that I received that there's recently been a shift in where Saturn was and where it's moved to. And when it did that, there would be an easing, I think. And I think that was last Sunday, wasn't it?
Yes, it was just yesterday, I think. I'm just double checking that because so much is happening every day. It's just happened. In fact, I think right now Saturn moved out of Capricorn.
Yes.
It's temporary because what happens, the planets move forward and then they appear to stop and move backwards. We call it retrograde. Planets do not change, do not stop in the sky, and they do not change direction. It's got to do with our view from Earth. And so Saturn has just moved into Aquarius. It's now at 0 degrees. So out of Capricorn till early July. So we're getting 3 months now of a taste of what is to come next year for 2 years, 21 and 22, when Saturn moves through the sign of Aquarius. So it's a change, it's a shift. And so he'll get up to about 2 degrees of Aquarius and then turn retrograde and go back and come back into Capricorn for the remainder of the year, for the last sort of 6 months or so of the year. So he's not finished with Capricorn, but there's this movement now into the sign of Aquarius. And that's another big, interesting kind of topic. Do you want me to go there? To
yeah,
what
absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so the zodiac is a wonderful design. It's just quite stunning, actually, the way the signs all work together as a system in a circle. You know, a circle represents wholeness. And so, like, we started Aries, and it's like a journey, you know, from Aries through to Capricorn, to Aquarius, to Pisces, and back to Aries. So one of the things Capricorn represents, if you like, is sort of the peak of worldly achievement and accomplishment. That's why Capricorns make such goodness people, such great business people, organizers. They're running countries, they're running, you know, it's just what that sign does, that they take on professions. But it's like, once we've got to the top of the mountain, Capricorn is the mountain and the mountain goat, you go, well, what to now? Where to now? And then we look out. It's like from the mountaintop almost, you could look up and you go, oh God, look at the universe, look at the cosmos, look at the sky. You get a big view, big picture view. So Aquarius is a shift from earthy, very pragmatic Capricorn to visionary, air sign, highly intellectual, intelligent Aquarius, which is all about people, the universe, humanity, community, groups of people, technology, science, brilliance, the people in the world historically who've been, you know, standout geniuses and those, you know, wonderful inventors who are like channels for new ideas and new knowledge are usually Aquarian, Uranian types, as you would know. This includes astrologers, you know, so this kind of tuning into something bigger than just my worldly concerns, you know. And so it's also a sign of revolution and change and awakening. You know, it's like, okay, this is wake up time.
Yeah.
Things need to change. We need to do things differently now. And we need to reorganize ourselves and reorganize everything and consider the bigger picture and humanity as a whole. So
just to make it clear to people that's what we're getting a taste of for the next 3 months from now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, that's right. But there's going to be a whole lot more in the coming years. But I just want to speak for a minute on Saturn in Aquarius. As with everything, every planet, every sign, we can look at the negative expression of it and the really positive, the most positive possibilities. Yeah, every single planet and sign. So in Aquarius, the wonderful thing, of course, is this amazing, intelligent, creative, genius consciousness. It's about consciousness. So, you know, that includes, you know, looking to universes and galaxies and UFOs and planets and star systems, but also then how we translate that on Earth. The negative side of this, which we must consider with Saturn here, is that it can be that we get very fixated in certain ways of thinking. And the shadow side can be, I know I'm right and you're wrong. You know, it can get really locked in. So one of the manifestations now of Saturn in Aquarius for a few months is what we're seeing is that people are losing what we think of as individual freedom of movement. And we're being, you know, told to stay in. It's kind of a self-imposed, so it might even feel like a prison sentence to some, you know, locked away. We're not really locked away, but that's what's happening. But it is for the collective. It's like a necessity that must happen for the collective. So it's a very interesting thing. And of course, we use technology. So now we're all going to be doing our, you know, our work online, which many of us have been doing anyway, but now it's going to be pretty well solely online.
Yeah.
And will our network systems be able to hold up to that? You know, Aquarius is also technology, so it's going to put a tremendous strain on those systems, but out of it can come brilliant solutions. Because that's what humans do, don't they?
We do. We're very smart.
Very smart and incredibly creative and inventive. And you know that wonderful old saying, necessity is the mother of invention?
Yes, yeah.
And Saturn is the master of necessity. Absolutely.
Well, I think and I've written about this on a previous post on my Body Light page, that when people have restriction like this, they're hothoused. So look at what happens with the plant when you put it in a greenhouse. It just goes, it blooms beautifully. It becomes bigger than what it normally would have been if it hadn't been put into those conditions. So you've got this, I think we're going to see a massive amount of creativity come out of all this. As we get through the shock, the adjustment, and then getting into the routine, the groove of the new way of doing things, we're going to see massive, massive changes to art, to literature, to communication, education, and we're going to get creative about it.
We are.
Yeah.
We are. Absolutely. I know. It's actually really exciting. And it's because remember we're, in terms of big picture things, we're on the cusp of the new age. And what is the new age? It's the age of Aquarius. Like it's a thing. It's real.
Yeah.
Astrologically, it's real. It's not just some hippie idea that came out of the 60s. Yeah. It's actually a real thing. And we're in a transition period now.
Yeah.
Into this. And so these shifts, so I've made some notes here, is that I'm interested in this whole energy of Aquarius, because remember, Aquarius comes after Capricorn. In 1995 to 2002, Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, was in Aquarius for 7 years. Neptune was in Aquarius 1998 to 2011. So we've had these slow-moving outer planets in the last couple of decades transitioning through this sign. So things have been moving and changing, and technology has just been exploding during that period. Chiron was in Aquarius 2005 to 11. Saturn in Aquarius a little bit this year and for the next 2 years. And in December of this year, there will be a conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And that's, astrologically speaking, that's really important, because these two planets come together every 20 years, but they haven't had their conjunctions in air signs for a long time. In the last 200 years, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions have been in Earth. So we've been focused on very pragmatic, earthy things. That's another indicator of a big shift. But the big exciting piece is that 2023-24, Pluto goes into Aquarius for about 20 years, and that is the big one. So we've sort of been in this process now. It's been building up. Things have been shifting and changing in the collective now, and consciousness has been expanding and growing radically, hugely. I would be certain that everybody listening to this is a part of that, that expansion of consciousness, and it's been rapid. And so, hang on to your hats, folks, because when Pluto hits Aquarius, boy, things are going to change. And that's when I think the Aquarian energy is really going to start to significantly birth itself. And it's a period. It's not a date when that will happen, but there will of course be significant dates during that time.
Yeah.
I'm hoping I'm around for some of it. I'm hoping I'm here for that early stage of Pluto and Aquarius, because I want to see what's happening. Yeah. I might even be here for the whole of it. Who knows?
You might. You don't know. So we've got 3 months of getting a glimpse of what's going to happen after December.
Yes.
And that's from now till July.
Yes.
From July to December, things sort of go back a bit to where we are now. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, I don't know whether that will be the case with the virus. I don't know whether I'm not, I mean, I don't know how long this virus is going to be at a kind of serious critical level.
Yeah.
I don't know, and different people are kind of, I think, you know, we are in new territory here, and when it's
Yeah.
unknown territory. I've
Yeah.
never heard the word unprecedented being used as much as it has since about November last year with the
Yeah.
fires. Like, it's the word because it's true. So
Yeah.
I don't think anybody really knows
No.
yet.
But I think if you follow China, we're probably looking at a good 4 months, because China's
Yes,
starting to come back online now.
if we take tough measures, which is certain,
Yes,
you know,
which is what
tough.
people are doing,
That's
and more are going to come in for Australia. It's basically just suck it up, people, and
absolutely.
go with it and do your best. And then and the quicker people do that, the quicker that the restrictions can lift.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think, and in this period, it's so important for each of us in our own understanding and experience to really practice self-care and draw on all of the tools, whatever they've been, that we've been doing for years and decades, you know, all the healing and spiritual growth and transformation and all the things that we know and often get lazy about. Like, I think it's super important for each of us to be on a daily basis doing those things that we know help us to remain, you know, grounded and calm and well and so on, because it is intense, and people's, you know, stress and anxiety is up, and that's completely natural.
it is.
So
It is.
yeah.
So I just wanted to say that I was reading something that Charles Darwin, the evolutionist, said, and it was that it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It's the one most adaptable to change. So I know Taurus people.
I know where you're going.
I'm going to go there.
Good. No, good, because I love this topic.
Yeah, Taurus does not like change at all.
No. No.
And I must say, and you can correct me on this, but just because you're a Taurus and we're saying these things doesn't mean that, and you go, well, that's not me, doesn't mean that it's incorrect. It just depends on where it is in your chart too, doesn't it?
That's right.
Yeah, so,
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So that's why
Yeah.
people get confused and disappointed, I suppose, and cynical about astrology, because they say, well, I'm a Leo or I'm a Sagittarius, but that doesn't apply to me. But it actually depends where it is, because there's more to
That's
you.
right.
Sun sign, your moon sign, your rising sign, there's all those things, isn't there?
That's right. And all the planets are all in different signs for everybody. So the way I like to paint that picture, which I think is helpful, is that absolutely every Taurian is not the same. It's just that can't possibly be. So, but however, Taurians have certain characteristics. And so I say, like, imagine you had 20 Taurians and they were all in a room together. And then you had, say, 20 Sagittarians in another room. Now, in the room with Taurians, they're all individuals. You know, they're not identical, but they are Taurian. And over here in the Sag room, again, they're all individuals and they're all different and unique, but they're definitely Sag. And if you walked into the Taurian room, you go, whoa, this feels like this. And then you walked into the Sag room, man, you would know the difference. Like, those signs are different, and yet within that, everybody is individual. And it's because, absolutely, we're all born on a different date, different year, and we have all the other planets and influences and houses going on. So, like our fingerprints, we're all incredibly unique.
Mm.
But there are characteristics and qualities that are common to the sign of Taurus. They may not all look exactly the same, but the underlying qualities are the same.
Yeah.
So shall I kind of talk about that?
Well, I was just going to ask you, do you think they're the ones who might be most predisposed to struggling with these changes?
Yes, because astrologically, in the circle of the zodiac, in the wheel, Taurus is an earth sign. It's also a fixed sign. So there are 3 earth signs. Taurus is fixed, Virgo is mutable, Capricorn is cardinal. Again, this beautifully explains why the 3 earth signs are not the same. You know, they're earthy, but they're earthy in different ways.
Yeah.
But Taurus is fixed earth, and it's perfect, because if you look at what Taurus is about, its purpose is to ground, stabilize, build, and anchor. And this is why Taurians, believe me, I know what I'm talking about. My father and my elder sister are Taurians. There's a lot of Taurus energy in my family. I didn't get it, but I'm very familiar with it personally. And I know a lot of beautiful Taurians. My father was a farmer. He was a builder. And very hardworking, pragmatic man. His favourite phrase to evaluate and judge people was, you know, if you're practical, tick, you're a good person. If you're not practical, and if you don't have any common sense, he was always using the word common sense, you know. So it's very practical, grounded, earthy, and so it's about, you know, building things, and you build them strong so they last, and you build upon that, and you make sure, like the ownership of property is very important in Taurus, and having money in the bank, and thinking sensibly and pragmatically, and not taking risks, and working really hard to secure what you have, you know. And so now there are some Taurians who may think, well, I'm not really into all of that. But the Taurus energy is still functioning in regard to whatever house it might be in their chart, and so on, and whatever other planets are affecting that sun. So,
Yeah.
So it's a sign that loves things to be stable. It will resist change.
Yeah. So what about during this pandemic and the changes? Who would be most likely to be more readily adaptable? What sign?
The mutable signs, the 4 mutable signs, which are Gemini, it's a mutable air in the thinking, and Sagittarius, its opposite sign, and Virgo and Pisces. These are the 4 signs, the mutable signs, that thrive on change and variety. They get bored easily, they're fluid, they're able to move. You'll see it even in, see, I'm a mutable person. See, even like when I talk, you know, I'm moving, everything's moving.
Yeah.
And there's this movement, and so it changes, just, it's like breathing, you know, in the mutable sign. So now you may not be a mutable sun sign. Your sun mightn't be in one of those 4 signs I mentioned, but there still could be a whole bunch of other planets in the mutable signs, making you actually quite adaptable. So you've got to look at the whole chart. It tells the whole story.
Yeah.
So I would say those signs are the signs that are fundamentally more adaptable, because that's just what they do.
Yeah. So we're in the throes of the birthing of the age of Aquarius.
Yeah.
This I mean, for me, seeing this big move that we're going to see and currently undergoing, like you mentioned before, to online is a big part of that. I mean, when the internet came out, I thought, well, there you go, we're here. You know, we've arrived.
Yes, that's right. This is our tool.
Because it's about doing things like mass communication, groups, you know. And I have Aquarius rising, so I always think that as the older I get, the more I go into that energy. And the first thing I wanted to do when this all happened was I wanted to gather my people, my little community that I have here, and gather them together. And it's also a female thing to do, but gather them together and reassure them and tell them that we might have an afterlife discussion group, which I normally do once a month. It's now going to go online, you know, those sorts of things. And those people who don't want to go online, I'm going to create an email list for you. So that was how that sort of manifested through me.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I'm looking at that as well. And I've been getting emails from the QFA, the Queensland Federation of Astrologers, and we have a monthly meeting Monday nights in the city. Well, of course, you know, we had our last meeting last month, and now they're setting it up which is beautiful, to do it online. Never done that before.
Yeah, you can do it
And
in your pajamas. No, you can't.
exactly. Exactly. And I'm going to, I'm going to be doing that too. And I'm just speaking to so many people, and that's so, yeah.
And that's the other thing I've noticed too, is that we're all communicating. Suddenly we're communicating. We're even phoning. Oh my God, we're actually using a phone and talking.
I know. I've had some friends just call me up and saying, I just wanted to have a chat, and just connect with you.
Last Sunday night, I had a voice from speaking to so many people all day. It was ridiculous. And I thought, I'd never normally do that many calls all at once, but it's all part of that, isn't it?
And and I've always been active on Facebook too. It's just a wonderful medium for me. I enjoy it a lot, and I share astrology, and I'm part of all these beautiful painting groups of women around the world, and all these and just personal friends, and it's just fantastic. And the gorgeous, positive, funny, fun, connective energy that's just growing and growing, to see your feed sort of flooded with all this beautiful stuff and lots of funny things, and it's great.
Yeah. So I was just
and then it will start getting kind of serious, and we'll be focusing on organising and so on.
Yeah. So this is the time for thinking outside the box, really, isn't it? And that's sort of like that creative Aquarian, opportunistic, go with the flow sort of, opportunistic in a good way, I mean. Although it happened in a bad way, I know that there's been problems in supermarkets with that.
Yes.
But it's like, I was thinking, well, how am I going to see my daughter and her partner? And, because she lives on the other side of town, we're saying we shouldn't travel out of our neighbourhoods and all those and I'm sure in the next few days it'll be locked down that we, definitely can't do that.
Yes.
And hopefully most people will obey. So I'm thinking, well, how are we going to see each other? You want to see each other, I mean, on a regular basis in a prolonged situation. And of course there's these online platforms like we're using now, Zoom.
That's right.
And I thought we could sit down and have an online dinner together.
That's right.
Have a chat around. We can still have dinner together. You can still be with family, and
just hang out.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, and just relax.
In fact, that's right. In fact, my son, who's been living in the UK for about 10 years, running a business over there, the online business primarily, but he has staff and an office and so on. He Viber videoed the family and said, "Hey guys, this was around about Tuesday last week, because I've been concerned." He was living in London, and London's become an epicenter. And he said, "I've made a decision." He said, "I booked a flight out. I'll be in Australia on Thursday night." I went, "Oh, thank God for that." Then the next morning, I heard that Dubai Airport, and I knew it was flying Emirates flight, was going to close. And you know what I did? I just sent a call out, and I just said, "Please get him home safely." I just went, just get him home. Next thing, Thursday, we get another Viber video. He called me, and I was at my daughter's house, and he's on a plane, and I said, "Chris, where are you?" And he said, "I'm 20 minutes out of Sydney."
Oh.
I mean, and he thought he would have to self-isolate in Sydney, but they let him get on a plane. He's now holed up on the Gold Coast, overlooking the beach, having a lovely old time. He set up his office there. And he said, he contacted the family and said, "Who's up for a Skype party on Thursday night?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's exactly right. So all this has happened in a new way, and it's just, we're going to get very inventive.
We are.
Very creative.
So, it's a very interesting time, but we can't reboot 2020 because it's got a virus. So I was thinking that this morning, and I thought, oh gosh. Anyway,
that's right.
It's about looking to the future and adapting as best we can and as quickly as we can for all of us, for all our sakes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And there is life on the other side of this, and it'll be different. But that needs to happen, doesn't it? Things just couldn't keep going the way they were. It was just, it's been hurtling towards disaster for a long time.
Yeah, and people have been
environmentally and
people have become quite disappointed, disillusioned, cynical, and that's not good for any culture.
No, it isn't.
No.
No, it isn't.
And even someone said, two friends of mine said that, you know, well, how do you change things? And one said, well, you just crash it all and start again. You know, it's almost like that, isn't it? We've still got things in place, so we're sort of just going to rebuild from the ground up now.
That's right. And it's literally been forced upon us, you know.
Yeah.
Well, so did you want me to say a little more astrologically about the Taurus story, just briefly?
Well, I was wondering if you wanted to go sort of talk a little bit more about December, what might happen around that time, because that's what people are looking for, that light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes.
You know, and hopefully it's not the train. So
yes, that's right.
Give us a few insights there.
That's right. Okay, so that's great. So in December we have these two planets, Jupiter and Saturn, come together. As I said, and the last time they did that was in the year 2000, and that happened in the sign of Taurus. So it's a very important cycle in astrology, the coming together of Jupiter and Saturn. And as I said, the significance of this one is that it's in an air sign, and I love that it's in Aquarius, like that particular air sign, because there's 3 air signs, and that it's at 0 degrees of Aquarius. So the first degree of any sign is a really powerful moment. You know, so when any planet changes sign and crosses that threshold into a new sign, it is now completely in a new landscape. It's in new territory. So that planet that represents whatever it does has moved into a new landscape. So they're coming out of, you know, quite serious, heavy, responsible Capricorn into Aquarius. And it's literally like on an energetic level, what comes to me in this moment is it's like, let's fling the doors open, and take big breaths of fresh air. And that could be literally like, we'll get out of our houses, you know, and I'm not saying that can't happen before then, but it's as a sort of metaphor, you know, it's like, okay, now we're in a new place, and it's about the people and the collective. And because fundamentally Aquarius is very idealistic, and one of the ideals is equality and liberation for all, you know, the brotherhood and sisterhood of mankind and womankind and everything in between, you know, and that we're all unique and different, but we're all here together. So that's what that sign's about. And I think this significant movement of these two planets joining up at 0 degrees of Aquarius doesn't mean magically overnight everything will be fabulous, of course, but it's a very important moment. And as I said, we'll get a little taste for 3 months now of Saturn in Aquarius. It won't be the same, but we'll get a little glimpse of all of that. But that meeting of those two planets, and then Saturn will be in Aquarius for 2 years after that, and Jupiter's in Aquarius for all of 21. And Jupiter does very well in Aquarius. Jupiter is very at home in that sign, you know, because it's a very big, expansive energy. And Jupiter's always looking up and out at possibilities. In Aquarius, the sky's the limit, literally. And the Saturn part of that says, okay, now how do we get organized, and how do we get this to work on a practical level? Because Saturn's always about the practical.
Oh, I know. I've got Saturn on my sun. So I'm very organized.
Yes. Exactly. I didn't get such strong Saturn, so, you know, I kind of sort of fly more by the seat of my pants in many ways, but, you know, but yeah, Saturn is great for that. Okay, this is real now. Now we need to organize. You know, and on that, I heard a very interesting interview a day or two ago on TV, I think, with a guy who's like a real IT expert, and he was talking about how the government, the new government did not, or the Liberals did not construct our new NBN in the way that it was originally intended. You know, they didn't do the full fibre optic, and now we're going to see the results of that because our system, and they're working very hard behind the scenes, you know, all those companies and people to try and boost it. But the copper wiring.
I know, yeah.
And so this guy, he said, look, this is really important now. And he said one thing the government could do to both boost the economy is to get on now and actually train up thousands of people who are already techie savvy, train them up and get out there and fix it and spend the money, because it will stimulate the economy and we'll end up with a decent system.
Yeah.
And that is a brilliant thing. And I think that's going to have to happen. And this is also Saturn in Aquarius and Jupiter in Aquarius. It simply has to happen now.
Yeah. Yeah. And whilst
so I hope so. I hope the government hears that and gets that message.
Yes. Well, this is
brilliant.
This is the upside of things to it. While we're on the surface, we're seeing everything restricting and businesses crashing, basically, where other things that you're not hearing about are expanding a lot, exponentially, to be able to cope with this. So, you know, and it's like the news items with the nurses, the doctors, the police, all those students who've been in training, been set off before they were ready to graduate because, you know, we need them. So more people are going to come in and fill their shoes. So there's this huge increase in training and educating people to cope with what's going on. I know someone who works for Telstra. They're expanding, as you can imagine, hugely. All those communication things are expanding as we speak right now. And if you think about all the essential services, they're all expanding, you know, to be able to cope with everything. And that's going to give people jobs.
That's right.
Yeah, Australia Post. Can you imagine all the online shopping? They're going to need huge amounts of people.
And they've been struggling to survive for ages now.
It's a real, and isn't that the sign of the Kali Yuga, where things go completely in opposite direction? You know.
That's right. And in the transition period between these big yugas, these big time periods, that's the time when things are chaotic and things are getting broken down and there's earth upheaval and like everything's kind of moving and changing, and then a whole new period emerges. It's actually wonderful. And my feeling is that on a soul level, all of us here, we've been preparing for this time. You know, I think we've been for lifetimes, but also in this lifetime, we've been preparing for this without knowing exactly what it was going to look like, and we still don't know what it's going to look like in the coming years. But this is it.
Yeah, and I think people in the community, various individuals, are going to rise up.
Definitely,
in an effort to help their communities, because, like you say, it's the time. So it's really a time about walking the talk.
That's right.
Putting into practice everything that you believe and you've learned and you know is right, and tuning into what's right. And I'd just like to say to people out there, if you're seeing people who are being treated badly, step in and say something. You know, don't let it go on. Don't let the people being treated badly in a terrible situation that we're in at the moment.
That's right.
And this is where I feel like you know, I feel that phrase citizen responsibility is going to kick in. And maybe that's part of that Aquarius energy too, that humanitarian sort of situation.
Yes, absolutely. Responsibility, you know, for your community. And the other thing, as you were saying, that, you know, step up and step in and say something. There's also a lot of activation of Aries energy now. In 2020, Aries Mars energy, which is the warrior.
Yeah.
And that warrior energy lives in us all, and it's like, as you were saying, you know, people are going to start coming through, new heroes.
Yeah.
And Aries is the sign of the hero and the warrior at best, you know. So I think for all of us, you know, tapping into that energy in ourselves, particularly if it's being activated in our chart this year, that Aries energy. Yeah, like being brave, being courageous, being bold, Yeah.
I think that's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
We're in for a bumpy ride, but it's
Bumpy ride.
hell of a journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
I think, you know, for everyone just to stay positive, ride the waves of change as best you can.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So, Babula, thanks so much for joining me today.
A pleasure, Sheryl. I've enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, great. It's been great to get your astrological insights. And for those who are watching this, Babula and I, just before the interview, decided that we're going to keep trekking our way through the pandemic, keeping an eye on it, and we'll be posting more information about that very soon. So, and that will be spread around, I'm sure, on Babula's page and the My Strange Encounters page and my Body Light Centre page and my own page and anywhere else I can spread it to help give people a bit of reassurance in a lot of ways that, you know, this is about change. It's not about stopping and staying where we are. It's about the transformation. Right. Yeah, so, that's right. So please join us. We'd love to have you come along for the ride with us. And Babula, thanks again for being with me today.
You're so welcome, Sheryl. Bye. Bye, everybody.